where the deals are coming from right now. I will tell you, half of my properties have been listed, so I want you to know that anyone who tells you there's no deals to be found on the listings, or LoopNet is garbage, don't even waste your time, or whatever. 3 of my deals came from LoopNet, which is, you ask any real sophisticated fancy investor, they'll tell you there's nothing to be had there. But there is. The difference is we have things that we do during our search to uncover the hidden potential, right? That being said, right now it's tough. There are a lot of people who are excited about storage, and so the listed properties, I think, are fewer and farther between. If you said, what's the one thing I should do to be finding deals tomorrow? Tony, I would say...
I say probably do mailings.
I would say do 1,600 mailers, right? Because you'll own 4 properties guaranteed in 12 months. Not really, but that is where the deals are coming from. Tony, you've got 4 deals. Do you mind very quick? Can we go, I think this will be helpful. If we go around the room, anyone who has a property either under contract or you own, tell us how you found it. So let's start with Brent.
My deal came from Ken.
Now all of you that were wondering why I keep Ken around,
Should Ken do this?
quite likely. Your deal came from Ken. Where did Ken find it? Where did I find it? Really? Where did I find it? It didn't come from Chris? No. Pack-a-lot came from me. All right. I'll take credit now. There's a lot of them. I lose track. Tony, you have 4.
I have 4. My first one came through Mike. After Ken and I had our conversation, I went to visit Mike for a minute and kind of learn about this business. And he said, hey, I have this one in Newcastle, PA, which is ironically an hour from my house, and it was on the way home from Mike's house. So I'm like, well, I'll take a look.
Before you go on, do you remember where I found it?
It was a mailing.
It was a direct mailer, and it was a direct mailer that I did not get a response from. I actually got a letter returned to me that said, your address is wrong or whatever, undeliverable. When you do a mailer, that is your gold. Those returned letters, I bought 2 that way. 2 of my 5 properties have been through that way. 2 of my 3 unlisted properties have been that way, if I'm doing the math right. Long story short, if my letter's not getting through, nobody else's is. So my odds of success just went up. One other thing before we go on, that wasn't a deal for me. I talked to the guy twice. I called him and had 2 conversations 2 weeks apart. The second time he thought I forgot about him. It wasn't a deal for me. 1, because I'm not immune to falling into my own traps of, it's too full, right? It doesn't fit my model. I will say that wasn't enough for me to throw it out. I was still intrigued enough to get on the phone, spend that first 30 minutes of investigative work, and ultimately what I figured out is actually there is potential here because of the low rents, but it's not a Mike Wagner deal because it's 4 hours from home. What was the timing of this? About a year ago, right? So my wife was pregnant with a 3rd kid on the way. I had 2 active projects in. It just wasn't a deal for me at that time. If I found that deal a year prior, would I have bought it? Probably, absolutely, right? I just underscoring the point that because it's not a deal for me does not mean it's not a deal for one of you, and vice versa. There are deals that I would do that wouldn't be a good deal for you to do right now because of your risk tolerances, your experiences, and your objectives.
So Mike,
Yeah.
when you sent the letter to kick back, is that because the office location was moved or incorrect, or why did it kick back?
I believe in both situations where that's happened to me, I ended up owning the other one, and I fell into the same boat, is they had a P.O. box, but I was selling to the physical site. They didn't have a mailbox.
There was no location.
Correct.
So did you skip trace it to get the number, or do you have some other way to contact?
When I do my mail, skip tracing is a good option. I will tell you that when I was doing mailers, I was doing it on such a small scale and so targeted that I would just Google the name, do the whitepages.com search, and track down numbers. Get on. Like in that case, all the information was good except the address, but I could find a link between the owner and that property, and then a different phone number, and I just call that. So that's the DIY model of skip tracing, I guess. All right, so go on with.
I want to elaborate a little bit too. You know, my background is mainly flipping houses, and I didn't get the self-storage business at all. Like, I went and looked at it, and I still think it's a coordinated, like, 10 things. Like, I don't understand why I'm going to pay $300,000 for the property. And then Mike kind
It's
of.
because you're cheap, you know, you want to get as cheap as
Well,
possible.
correct. Yeah, I definitely, you know, but, you know, do the numbers, it makes a lot of financial sense. So Mike kind of awoke that part of my brain. I always love self-storage. You drive past, I never got the business because it's like half the ones we buy are rusted, ugly tin shacks. And I still don't get why people want to rent them, but they do. But, so my second one came from, when I bought my first one in Newcastle, I had a light bulb moment. I said I should call people within a half-hour distance of this facility. And I did, and I called one facility. He said, I don't want to sell, but I know somebody who does want to sell. And it was a smaller operator that didn't manage correctly at all, and it's a turnaround type property. So he was insisting he needed $250,000 for the property, and when I went and looked at it, I threw out the $150,000 mark, and he said, "Well, I'll take 200." And so that was my flipping mind coming out, and ended up paid like $180 for it. Is what we ended up settling on. And I drive this point home. Most people that, I should say most, a lot of people that own these facilities don't get the number side of it like we do. They still think it's a tin shack. They have a hard time filling it up. They don't know how to manage it. They don't have any systems in place. And the second one I bought, the guy was actually relieved just to be done with it. He had 3 kids. He was overwhelmed with it. It was good for him to get out of it. Third facility came from a mailer. It was the son called me, the father built the facility, the father died, the mother was trying to run the facility and the father didn't run it correctly, and she didn't really know the business at all, so it was running pretty much into the ground. The fourth one I have under contract right now is through Chris, just networking. I think it's a big deal that
Is it listed or no?
it's not listed.
Okay, so of your 4 properties, 2 were direct mail, 1 was cold calling. This other one was through a network, a relationship with a broker. Ken, Hinesville was a direct mailer.
Was it?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it was a listing. You're absolutely right. Yep. It was listed at $725. The beginning investor would look at that and go, well, that ain't a deal at that price. But because we looked at it and said, what would make it a deal? Ken said, if we paid half for it. And I said, all right, let's pay half for it.
What intrigued me about that one is the lack of information on the listing.
That's a good point.
Had it been listed for a while too?
Yes. Yes. Been listed for almost a year. Listing was about to expire. But when I look at listings and they don't have a cap rate and they don't have a lot of the information, I mean, if you see a listing and it looks nice and it says a 7.61 cap rate, just go for it. I'm just moving on or whatever.
Right.
He didn't have anything, the expense, I asked for expense information and there were obviously big gaps of information that I was not getting.
That's hugely important. It's not what's in the listing, but also what's not there. A key to success in anything you do is helping other people succeed. This broker did not deserve a commission for selling this property. He was terrible at his job. Based on what he didn't even put anything in the listing, right? He just wasn't good. He didn't deserve to succeed. Ken endured that and helped him succeed anyway, and as a result, Ken has now experienced an incredible degree of success on his first property.
Yeah, he was the wrong guy to hire to sell that property. That property
And
was sold
that's-
very quickly with the right guy.
Yep, and that is a trend, that is a belief that I have a very hard time with, because it's like, I tend to think I'm pretty good at things, and I expect other people to be good at things if they're gonna get a reward, right? So my knee-jerk reaction is when someone sucks, is to be like, all right, I'm moving on. But if I can remind myself that helping them succeed, even though they don't deserve to sell that property, will help me succeed, I can look back at basically every deal I've done and found a moment where I wanted to be like, screw you all, I'm out, and then reminded myself of that to get past that moment, if you will.
He told me to make that, I said, I gotta make a low, it's not worth to hear what you're asking. He said, make an offer, listing's almost done. And so I did, and I did it in writing, and then we called me back and he said, you gotta go north. That was it. And I was like, no counter, no, and I said, I really don't want to bid against myself. He said, you gotta go north. And that's when we went to the stalemate for 3+ weeks, until I eventually called him back and went north against all my, everything I said.
Right. Everything Ken believed was that if he bid against himself, he would end up paying more for the property. We suspended that belief, because what's the harm? Let's give it a shot. He bid against himself and paid 50 grand less than he was willing to bid. So was Ken's belief that if he bid against himself, he'd pay too much true? No. He proved that it wasn't. He bid against himself and he got a better deal than he was willing. Does that make sense? And where'd Tifton come from?
It was listed.
That one was listed as well. You did see that one. We had coffee over that one. Did you offer on it? Who offered on it? Jeremy Marshall. Anyways.
I was like, I know it's a deal, but I don't know what I'm doing, so I didn't do it.
Yeah. So that was a interesting situation. I was helping just a friend back home, and he offered on the property, and Ken approached me about coming in on a second deal with him, and I had no idea they were the same two deals. So I was advising somebody who was competing against Ken for a deal that I was going to participate in, and it ended up being somewhat of an uncomfortable situation. I was like, Jeremy, I know you're not getting the deal, and here's why. He was totally cool with it. There was nothing malicious in any way. It was just, I bring that up because you'll find this is a very small community. Storage is not like multifamily or single-family houses. All our paths are going to cross multiple times, and that's okay. We've had, Brent, how many deals have you bid on that one of my other students was bidding on?
2 for sure, and there might have been 3.
Yeah. 2, I think there were 2.
I had a lot of conversations we had
Yeah.
on how we were gonna move forward and both be good
Yeah.
with it. And it was fine. It
It
was
worked
weird, but it went
Yeah.
better than I thought.
Hey, there's something to be said for being uncomfortable, man. Dave, your 2.
So hold on a second, that was where? The first one was, that was LoopNet. Ken, your second?
The second one?
Yeah.
Chris found it. The
Yeah.
broker brought it to me.
But it was listed, and I think it's
I think it was Lumen.
One point I want to make about listings is it's not like the MLS that you're used to, where you can go to a website and think you're going to find every deal. If you go to LoopNet and you go to Crexi and then you go to Argus, very segregated. There will be some that overlap and that are everywhere. From listed properties, you want the one that's listed in the residential MLS, or you want the one that's listed in the industrial zone.
Yeah, I mean, the one I have, it was listed on LoopNet, I guess, for a while, like over a year, and it was listed as like a warehouse.
Right.
And they put it on Crexi. 2 weeks later, I saw it, and he said he was getting calls on it, because it was listed as self-storage.
What's your price per square foot? Ballpark?
Roughly 20.
$20 a square foot on a facility that has tons of potential. We're going next week to confirm that. That was listed for over a year. But it wasn't listed in the right place.
And he admitted he's not a storage broker, he inherited the listing, didn't know what he was doing. He heard the market rates were below, but didn't really know.
Yeah. So he really doesn't deserve to sell a storage facility either.
Well, and he's with a big, like one of the prestigious commercial brokerage companies.
That just doesn't specialize in storage, right? Or he doesn't anyways. Yeah, so I tell people, yes, all those listing sources are good, and you want to be on the receiving end of their, put in your search criteria, have them emailed to you, so that going back to finding deals, you need to immerse yourself in being a storage investor. You can be a self-storage investor long before you own a property, if you decide you want to be. And what that involves is, I don't have a block in my calendar that says look for deals. It's just part of who I am. When I'm in the doctor's office in the waiting room, I'm scrolling my emails and it's all storage deals. Like 80% of the people that send me emails are relative to storage, just because that's who I've become. That's what you need to do. So have them sent to you. Beyond that, when you do go actively looking, self-storage for sale in Google, right? Self-storage for sale Indiana, and search. And I'm not going to tell you to skip the first page, but don't stop until you've looked through 5 pages of Google, because you want the bizbuysell.com listing or the Mary T's real estate brokerage. No one's ever heard of that. it's not doing digital marketing, that they're on the 5th page. That's the hidden potential that you're trying to uncover.
They're definitely there too.
They are, yep. I found the one we're going to look at tomorrow on it was a Craigslist listing that I found on Bigger Pockets. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, but let's finish up going around the room because I do want to move on. So, David, where were yours that the two you bought?
Yeah, the first one was listed. It had been listed for like 6 months. I was astonished that no one grabbed this property. And even strangely enough, we kind of asked the broker, they were asking 1.1 million. We thought it was worth about 8. My broker asked their broker what, floated that idea at about 8. He said, I don't know if I can get it done at 8, but I'm pretty sure I can get it done at 900,000. So, so we threw it out there. And while that offer was out for signage, they actually had offers for much more. For some reason, this broker said, well, you're first. We're just gonna stay with yours, because you were the first guy, and that's the right thing. That was a 49,000 square foot facility, bought it for $18 a square foot.
Nice. And the second one came from?
The second one was just an odd case of networking where I ran into one of my other single-family home investors at a Home Depot one day, and he's an appraiser, and I asked him if he ever come across anybody that was selling a self-storage facility. He said, no, but I just rented a unit at a place in this town, and the guy said he was going to retire in a year or two, so.
So you were a self-storage investor, and people knew that about you, and so deals started coming your way.
A little bit, yeah.
That's why we need to become self-storage investors, at least think of ourselves as one before we own a deal, right? This is kind of an aside, but I thought of it as you were speaking, and we were talking about helping other people succeed. The other thing is, when you're looking for deals and talking with brokers, for example, yes, you want to help them succeed. You also want to, well, let me back up. Here's the example, and I thought this is the reason I thought of it. When you said other people offered more, when I bought my property down in Florida, the previous buyer who had been under contract was from New York. I'm from New York. That guy didn't perform. Do you see how the broker might put me in a bucket of a guy who's not going to perform? So how quickly did I make sure the broker understood that I'm from the side of New York where we have more cows than buildings? Because it was a Manhattan guy who, right? So I wanted to be different from him. This rapport is important. Beyond that, helping him succeed. He wanted to sell the property. He had sold it originally he had helped the seller buy it for $830,000 like 11 years ago. And now he was selling it again. He had been tire kicker. He had told me tire kickers, people like going under contract and then getting cold feet, blah, blah. So it would have been in my interest, and it was in my best interest to show him that I was not a tire kicker, and that when I said I was going to do something, I was going to do something. So it wasn't 7 days before I was on the ground shaking his hand and looking him in the eye, in flip-flops and shorts because I ain't from Manhattan, right? That wasn't accidental. That's on purpose. That's me just being who I am, but being at least aware of the fact that who I am is important, especially when it is different from somebody else that broker has had a bad experience with. Does that make sense? I know this stuff is in the weeds and you got to be thinking, man, that's crazy. But this is the stuff, this is the 80% that when you add it to the nuts and bolts stuff we talk about, this is literally what makes us succeed.
Relationship.
100%. 100%. You said you have one small one, right?
That's all right. It was an accident.
You can buy storage by accident as well.
No, I actually built it out, but it was, I have a 20-unit apartment building that had a restaurant. We gutted it. We're going to throw storage units in there for the apartments. The city shut us down. We're going to do sprinkler systems. So I just found a little building, and we went in and just painted it and threw up the stuff from Janice that we had bought from the other place. And, I mean, you say 2 a month. Mine was rented first, like, week and a half.
There you go.
And I was just like, this is awesome. Never had to deal with it. Never had to deal with anything. So I've got one vacant. I've averaged about one vacancy out of the 18 that I have.
So we're going to save it for day 3, but we're going to talk, everything he just explained sounded really awesome and fun. And I'm not picking on you, but I know enough to know that if that were the whole story, he would already own many more storage facilities. Something stopped him from replicating that, and we're going to talk about that kind of thing on day 3. Right? Who else owns? You own 2, right?
Yeah, 2, yep. First one was, I was at a retirement party for a guy, and his wife came up and said, hey, do you want to buy our storage garages?
Awesome.
Yeah.
What made her approach you about that?
I don't know, I think she was approaching everyone.
Okay.
They were ready to retire, buy the RV.
She's a good saleswoman.
Yes, absolutely. And the next one was, within 9 months, competition was about 2 blocks away. Contacted us and just said, hey, we saw you just bought this other place, you want to buy us? And so, back to reaching out to the competition, I think when you're in an area is huge.
Yeah, especially if they're scared of you.
Yeah.
And you can show them that you're a nice guy, but you're right to be scared of me. Right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mine was listed on Craigslist, and we kind of did an initial analysis when we first found it, and it was listed, I think, for $425 or something, and the numbers didn't make sense. And then, so we just kept our analysis. Anything that I analyze, I just keep that in case it comes down later or come back to me or whatever. And then about 6 months later, they dropped it from $425 to $295, and then I offered them $200 based on the numbers that they gave me because it wasn't making any money, and I just was going off the NOI. And the seller was a complete jerk, just really difficult. I think he'd already caused the deal to fall through. I think somebody else in this room offered on the same facility. But he kind of fumbled a couple of other offers, and he was finally ready to sell it. And the listing agent was like, I think 270 is the least he's going to take. And we ended up settling on 270, and I wish I would have paid less because he was a dick. But but the whole process, like you said, it was a learning lesson, and so I learned so much by going through that. And even in residential, I've learned so much by sometimes screwing things up. But it was listed on Craigslist.
Good. It's you.
Got it from you, and you got it just from, I think, the random contact you made at some point, sent you a listing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was interesting.
Oh, yeah, there was like...
So it was an unlisted property that a broker sent me, but
There was like something weird going on where it seemed like there was 2 different brokers who had it, so we had to like get through that and find out what was actually going on with it, and it was just an unlisted property.
well, so it was a quote-unquote unlisted property that a broker brought to me, pocket listing per se. Come to find out there were 2 other brokers involved, and it was very much listed by one of them, and the other one was already in play, and so the discussion of us paying our broker out of our pocket came up, and how'd that play out? What is the ultimate agreement you made with the guy who found the deal?
He was like, you don't have to pay me. Like he was like, just I like making contacts and kind of make more storage contacts. So,
He saw enough value in giving first. He was giving up to you. Truth is, we weren't going to pay 3 brokers' commissions by any stretch.